Hey guys, welcome back. I'm happy to have you guys here. We're doing something a little different today, which I'm very excited about. I'm finally not sitting behind the stage. A journey over there. But I have a wonderful guest with me.
Thank you. My name's David Westman. I'm the senior producer on In the Black.
Wow. Welcome. How long have you been with it?
6 years.
Okay, so quite.
Yes. Well, this is a real passion project, and I actually have a full-time day job. As do my colleagues. This is a side project, yeah.
Side house. Okay.
Myself, Jack, our project director, and Edmar, we all have full-time day jobs, but we're the senior industry vets who have all the experience and the knowledge and the track record of making great games. And so we set the direction and we guide the junior members of the team who are mostly fresh graduates. Because we teach, we spot talent and we recruit them. And we've been really, really fortunate. Our current lead program started out as an intern, as a technical artist. Our current lead artist started out as an intern just doing lighting effects. And these guys are amazing. They do the heavy lifting. And there's about a half dozen of them all together, and there's about a half dozen that are regular part-time. And then there's anywhere from 10 to 20 people that just come in occasionally, like Marnix. I actually found him on Facebook. He was doing this amazing spacecraft concept art, so I just reached out to him and I said, well, I'm making a space game, would you be interested in working on it? And he said yes, and then as we got to know each other, and I told him my day job, he said, oh, I just applied at that school. I started in September.
Sorry, we're down to one mic. I like the fact with your job, just talent, and then kind of like your own devs.
Majority of the team is in, but there's a good in the Netherlands, and over time, over the years, South Korea and South America. Actually, our scientist, our main spacecraft designer, we found in Beirut. He is an amazing guy, Zach Al-Haj. There's a website that we rely heavily on for all the scientific references, and they had given their seal of approval, which they don't give very often, to a design of his. And so I tracked him down and asked him the same thing with Marnix, hey, would you like to work on this game? And he said yes. And it's been awesome because he's actually currently a PhD engineering student. But all of the science in the game checks out, and that's actually one of the key things that makes our game stand out, is that we take the science really, really seriously.
I like that. So we have a quick trailer we're going to show you guys, and then we'll be right back.
Our idea was to take hardcore science and apply that to basically a next generation space sim. Our game is going to be different because we're not going to rely on all of the other tropes that we've seen in science fiction, like shields and faster than light travel and artificial gravity. Our demands mean that we have to really look deep into the design and find new ways to make the game exciting and fun, and we think we've done that with Starfighter Inc.
We're not making shit up. We're doing our homework. We're studying the engineering. We've hired an engineer to design our spacecraft and weapon systems. He knows the math. It checks out. Everything in the game is something that could actually exist.
But you know, there's another big thing when it comes to why realism out there. Some people might say, well, what is real, and is it fun or not? Once you start to understand some of these scientific basics, it doesn't mean you can't enjoy things like Star Wars and Star Trek, but they start to feel a little incomplete. They're more like fantasy. They're imagination. They're very fun, but you feel like they could go a little bit farther if they put a little bit more work. And so Starfighter can be so rewarding for us when we see you have to fight the rules, but when you hammer them down, you have something that you know will work.
This game is a hard science multiplayer space combat simulator. But behind the scenes, there's a huge and vibrant world of mega corporations and their many subsidiaries doing business, competing, and scheming. And they hire mercenaries. They hire lots of mercenaries. And that's where you come in. You are a mercenary for hire, and you'll find endless opportunities as a starfighter pilot. You'll go wherever you can earn some credits and a little reputation.
I think the fact that everything in our game stems from technology and theory that has been heavily debated and accepted by the scientific community will really resonate with players. We've seen a lot of games that take a fantastical approach to space combat, but not too many that get into the nitty-gritty details of how spacecraft are actually built. This is where Starfighter Inc. really shines.
So as an example, you have like the waves that are created by Daphnis in the rings of Saturn, which make a very interesting situation for us to have a combat situation in and fly through, and give the people an experience that they haven't seen before.
Making UI for a game that is hard science is extremely difficult because it has to run past experts in the field. It has to run past people who know a lot about military user interface and, you know, the real stuff. You know, it can't be super arcadey, it can't be super flashy. I have to give you as little as possible while telling you as much as possible.
So this game happens no matter what. We think there's a lot of you that would also love to play this game. And to help us get this game to you, we need your help. Back this project, spread the word, get your friends to help out. It's just going to make the game that much better and bring it to you that much faster.
Since the last Kickstarter was unsuccessful, we've redoubled our efforts, and we now feel we have more gameplay prototypes to show and more of a reason for people to commit to the project.
Welcome back, guys. So now that we've seen a little bit about the game, why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Okay. Well, as I said, this project started about 6 years ago, and the guys that started it were just huge fans of the classic 90s space combat games like Wing Commander and X-Wing and so on. And it was at GDC in 2013, the Epic Party, that there was a video of space combat, and I just got into a chat with the guy standing next to me, and he said, yeah, we're working on this game to, you know, recapture those glorious gameplay experiences.
Oh, nice.
And as soon as he said X-Wing, I said, oh, well, yeah, I worked on that, and the TIE Fighter, and he said, get out of here. It's like, no, really? And, well, then would you be interested in joining our project? Yeah, hell yeah.
Yes, I don't mind.
And then I found out an old colleague was already on the project, and that just sealed the deal.
That makes it so much nicer.
Yeah, and Jack is amazing. He's our project director. He's really the driving heart of the project. You have to meet him one day. He's a character. There was a segment with him in the video there.
I know we have a bunch of different trailers, so yeah, for you guys.
So Jack's background was similar. He was the director on projects like MechWarrior 2 Mercenaries, the first Far Cry, the first Crisis. So between us, we have a pretty good pedigree of making good games.
Yeah.
And
he looks familiar.
Yeah, I know that guy. As much fun as it was to work on Star Wars, and I love those games, but they're basically World War II airplanes in space.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fantasy, not really science fiction. Mm-hmm. And in the back of my mind, I was always wondering, well, what would it look like if it was real?
Oh, I like that.
And so it took 20 years to get the opportunity, but...
Technology had to keep up with the ideas. That's what happened. You were limited by technology. And
it was something that was... The team already wanted to do something that was more realistic, more gritty, but I wanted to push them farther because there's like 24 other teams that are trying to recapture that that space combat feel, but they're literally trying to recapture the old games. Let's go where nobody thinks it's even possible to go. Let's try to make it as realistic as possible. Because people say, well, maybe you could make it realistic, but it wouldn't be fun. And I knew in my gut, no, we can make it fun. And so we did our initial prototype in Unreal Engine 3.
Oh, wow, okay.
And
so you've been working for a little while.
Placeholder assets, terrible UI, fairly steep learning curve, but within 15, 20 minutes, everybody's nodding their head. Yeah, this is fun. You're right. Yeah, no, exactly. We can build on that. And so ever since then, we've just been refining and polishing and working out a lot of scientific details and getting into big arguments. And
creative process.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's funny. Jack and I would just go at it, and so we've known each other for so long. But the younger guys are like, "Oh no, no!" It's like, don't worry about it. We love each other. This is just how we argue.
That's fair. What is one of your favorite things that you were able to put into the game to kind of make it your own? You know what I mean? Because you're saying this is an homage.
Well, I always wanted to be an astronaut.
Okay.
And my opportunity to join the astronaut corps has come and gone.
For all of us, it's not just you.
I'm still hopeful, but I realized that I could maybe make some sort of contribution towards that goal of turning us into a truly spacefaring species by doing something inspirational. Because most of the scientists and engineers that are working in this area will say, yeah, I got my inspiration from reading science fiction.
And you know what's interesting? It seems like a lot of it's going that way. Like the books you've read that are like, 20, 30 years old, we're now catching up to those times. Yeah. I still own my hoverboard, but we're not going to talk about that. So that's really neat that you were able to kind of have that idea of you want to be inspirational. You want to kind of make your own footing in the world.
And because it's a game and violence is always a little bit more engaging, we decided it's all set in our own solar system, and it's about 200 years in the future, but it's your standard corporate dystopia.
As they all seem to be.
But that provides a really good backdrop. So you have these huge mega corporations, and they're fighting these covert wars out in the outer solar system. And we're really thinking it through. It's not just that the spacecraft are scientifically accurate. The politics, the economics, the industrial infrastructure, why you're fighting, what you're fighting over, it all has to make sense.
Yeah.
And players might not really care, but if they do and they look at it, like, oh, yeah, that actually checks out. That makes sense.
That's really interesting. So then I guess my question is, would you consider it a flight sim or something a little bit more?
At its heart, it's a flight sim that focuses on space combat.
Okay.
But I've always believed that you can make something a lot more immersive and engaging if it feels real.
Yeah.
And it just draws players in. We want people when they play this game, it's like a lifestyle choice. I'm a mercenary. I'm a private military contractor. I fly nuclear-powered spacecraft out around Saturn, and that was the other thing, choosing Saturn as the backdrop for the first set of content that we're developing. It's such an amazing planet with like 60-plus moons and the rings, and that's been the basis of some arguments. Because
wait, why is that?
Well, I'm one of those visionary designers that doesn't fully appreciate sometimes the limitations of the current technology.
Fair.
And so I'll point out, oh guys, yeah, I know we wanted an asteroid cluster because everybody does, but that's not realistic. So I'm going to come up with a plausible reason to have a bunch of big chunks of something that you could fly around in.
Okay.
And so we decided, let's take one of the Shepherd moons in the Keeler Gap area. I think that's where it is. It's the moon Pallini.
And just destroy it.
And we'll have this radical faction is doing illegal antimatter research, and something goes wrong, maybe sabotage, who knows. But they blew up the moon.
Oh, there's an Alienware ship.
But it's a small moon, but it wasn't a Michael Bay explosion. It was a oh, it's fractured and
little
now the pieces
excessive.
are drifting apart.
Got it.
And so they actually built it, but as a placeholder to alpha, it's indestructible rock. I said, well, but guys, it's got to be ice. Like, it's really destructible. And like, shut up, Dave. We don't. We'll get there. We'll get there. Oh, and one other thing. Our carrier, it's like 2 kilometers long, right? It's really massive. Yeah. It's going to perturb the rings if it flies through them. Shut up, Dave. We're not going to.
So I understand the internal struggles now between you and the rest of the team. It's starting to make sense. It's starting to make sense.
Well, and initially, that was one of the challenges just with the art team. Because artists like to make things just look cool, and they're not necessarily worried about whether it actually makes sense.
No.
And so they would push back, and it's like, well, but you understand what Zach gave you is an engineering drawing. And you can't arbitrarily change the shape, size, or placement of these components.
It's not how that works, unfortunately.
But you have to give us our creative freedom. Yeah, you can make it as pretty as you want. But over time, because Zach's wonderful at explaining things, it's like science lessons with Zach. And he would really capture their imagination and get them interested in the science. So now they actually think about it when they're doing work. And like Marnix thinks about it a lot. He'll actually come up with ship designs that then we'll all get together and consult and work out the actual engineering. And okay, well, make that a little bit smaller, and otherwise you're going to break the keel. But
I understand this thing called force now.
Oh, this is cool. Currently there are 3 playable ships in the game.
Okay.
There's the Shrike Light Fighter. The earlier we saw the evolution of the Shrike.
Got it.
And the Hyperion Heavy Fighter, and those are actually kind of legacy designs that, especially with the Shrike Fighter, it looks like an airplane kind of. It's got wings. But no, those aren't wings. Those are sensory arrays and radiators.
Oh, okay.
And the Hyperion also has a kind of a flat, plane-like shape, but that's because it was originally designed for a particular military campaign that took place above the surface of an airless world. The Pegasus, the one that we had the virtual cockpit view of, that one has the cockpit inside the ship. The other ones have a cockpit like an airplane does, but that one, it's a sphere deep inside the ship, so everything is relayed by cameras and sensors.
That's actually kind of neat. Okay.
Well, if you look at, because I do, things like the Eurofighter Typhoon and the F-35, what they have nowadays is helmet-mounted displays, distributed aperture systems, so that if the pilot wants, he can essentially make his plane invisible and just look through it. And that's the idea behind the virtual cockpits that really every ship in the game has, because as a pilot you're always wearing a helmet-mounted display.
Yeah.
We have the full cockpit as a backup. It's always good to have a backup.
Can't hurt.
And also as a way of easing players into it. The players have expectations, and if you push too far, too fast, you tend to lose them. So we want to get players interested, hook them on the concept, hook them on the gameplay, and then introduce them to more and more advanced spacecraft and systems design.
And then you hit into the sci-fi kind of realm. You hit into the sci-fi realm and reality.
Yes.
Within realistic world sense.
Yeah, again, getting back to immersion based on reality, if the fantasy that you're exploring is something that could one day actually exist, I think that's a lot more compelling.
Oh, yeah. It's tangible. It makes it real a little bit.
Yeah.
Far in the horizon, but still real.
And the other cool thing about the way that the technology in the real world is developing towards this, if you, again, look at the Eurofighter and the F-35, particularly the F-35, it has such powerful computer systems in it, and a lot of that computing power is dedicated to making the interface easier for the pilots to deal with. So they're not constantly monitoring 100 different indicators. They're focusing on flying the plane and executing the mission. So we have a plausible explanation for how we can make learning to fly surprisingly easy. And so all this week, I've watched hundreds of players for the first time in their lives, take a HOTAS control system and fly a spacecraft. And
Yeah, that thing's impressive, by the way. I was not prepared for that setup.
It's been, I have to filter my
Yes,
language.
we
I
have
tend
to
to
here.
drop a lot of F-bombs.
Don't worry, so do I. We have to censor here very
I get
much
excited.
so.
But yeah, I mean, people who've never even touched these kind of controls, within a few minutes, they're still flailing about, but they're starting to get it. And then after 10 minutes, they really, okay, I just need more time. And I say, yeah, we can't give you a lot of time here, but you can imagine if you had 20 minutes, you'd be doing fairly well. And imagine where you'd be in an hour, and you see them start to grin and nod their head. And then after 10 hours, like, yeah.
I can actually fly this thing. So and now it's going to start getting loud, which is perfect. If we want to find out more about the game, where can we go on social media?
In the black, all one word, .gg, good game. And sign up on our mailing list. We're currently still in alpha, but we're aiming to do our early access release by the end of the year.
Oh, nice. Okay. So soon?
Very soon. The gameplay, it covers the gamut. Originally primarily designed as team-based multiplayer, very much in the vein of Counter-Strike or World of Tanks, World of Warships.
Got it.
But we had single-player envisioned primarily as tutorials and training, but our backers asked for more, and for GamesCom, we pretty much had to provide single-player content. So we've developed more single-player content, and the missions that we've been showing this week are actually designed to support cooperative multiplayer.
Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't realize that.
I have a particular claim to fame in the space of space combat games. I was the lead designer, effectively, of the X-Wing versus TIE Fighter game, which was the first big LucasArts multiplayer space combat sim. See how excited they are about what I just said?
I know, right? Oh my goodness.
And the drawback of the initial game was that it didn't have any story, and Star Wars fans really care about their story. And even our backers, they would like more story.
Fair.
And so with the expansion disc to that product, we developed 2 campaigns, one for the Empire, one for the Rebels, that were 15 missions long, 8-player co-op. That was 1997.
Yeah, that's pretty bold.
So yeah, fast forward 22 years, and we're going to offer even better.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. If you are here at GamesCom and you are